I would be now requesting Her Excellency Andrullah Kaminara, the EU Ambassador for Pakistan, to please join me on the podium.
Assalamu alaikum. Honorable Chief Justice, honorable judges and respected bar members, honorable guests, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It is an absolute honor to be addressing the third Azma Jahangir conference, and I would like from the start to congratulate the organizers, the Azma Jahangir AGHS Legal Aid Cell and the Azma Jahangir Foundation. I have not had the fortune to meet Azma Jahangir personally, whose life and achievements I very much admire, but I consider myself lucky to know her physical and extended adopted family, who are fueled by her passion for human rights and justice, and to see that her legacy is still very much alive and flourishing. I feel that also personally, I have been inspired by her life just by reading about what she was able to achieve. Ladies and gentlemen, in these types of settings, we tend to speak from our own perspective and provide our own prioritization to issues of human rights. I will try and spend most of the time I have to speak from another perspective, and I will split my intervention into two parts. The first, I will be presenting what human rights, I believe, priorities will be the ones that women from Tharbakar and Umarkot would like to see us listen to, and because I was there earlier on in the week, and then I will very briefly touch on some of the things that I personally believe. Let me tell you that having toured in Tharbakar and Umarkot and seen the conditions of life, the hard conditions of life, if I was speaking from their perspective, I think they would say they would prioritize with respect to human rights, their wish list in the following order. Having human rights starts by being registered, that you exist, having an ID card, a CNIC card. No clear data exists, but about 8 to 12 million people in Pakistan, predominantly women, don't have even that basic right. No registration means no access to services, no rights such as inheritance, no human status, no vote, no voice. So I think for those marginalized of the marginalized, the first step would be to be recognized that they exist. The second point on the wish list is education. And I know all of us here are privileged enough to have been educated, but for those people and those reality, that is an absolute necessity. Not even half of Pakistani women can read or write, and 50% is the average. If you go into the details of this statistics, rural areas in Balochistan, rural areas in Sindh, you will find that only 5 or 10% of the women can read and write. Being literate means that you can better know and demand your rights. But being literate also means at the very basic level, that when your child is ill and you're given some medication, you can at least know how to give that medication to your children. So for me, the second point on their wish list is the issue of access to education, because that is a prerequisite to demanding your human rights. The third point I would like to say from their perspective deals with climate adaptation. Areas such as Tharbakar and Umarkot are very vulnerable to climate change disasters. In fact, I was visiting I was there because I was visiting EU finance projects, which on the one hand focus on the disaster risk reduction and on the other hand on providing food security. Consider the following dilemma from their perspective. The main source of livelihoods in those areas is coal mining and livestock, particularly cattle. At the recent COP26 conference, phasing out coal and reducing methane gases from cattle raising was identified as the top causes of climate change. So people from those areas survive from mining and cattle raising, which causes climate change, which is their biggest vulnerability. Providing and planning now to give those people with alternative livelihoods and climate-resistant crops, not only out of charity, and I underline that, but also out of enlightened self-interest, means that we'll be providing them with the basic human rights and the basic human rights of a future. The other thing I have spent most of this week on is talking to businessmen and business organizations in Karachi, encourage them to acknowledge the challenges that exist with giving human rights to their workers and pleading with them to actually address those problems. Now let me now turn to just two very quick points from which are important for human rights from my perspective. The first one concerns the freedom of the press. Only when you have freedom of the press can citizens hold governments accountable, can have the information that they need in order to make informed choices about who to vote. So for us, for the European Union, freedom of the press is of utmost importance. The second point I would like to make is the issue of the rule of law. The EU in Pakistan for several years has been supporting the increasing capacity of the judiciary in order for them to provide effective, speedy justice. We are very pleased that we're working with the relevant ministries and also with the Chief Justice, and we're currently implementing a 20 million program, which is basically looking into strengthening the legal and regulatory framework, enhancing justice to all, alternative dispute resolution, and increased participation of women in the police force. Allow me to make one final comment on the role of women in the legal profession. Although I believe that there are excellent women judges in Pakistan, Pakistan still is the only nation in South Asia to have never had a female Supreme Court judge. I am convinced that if the justice system walked the talk, there would have been at least a few Supreme Court judges which are female. I would encourage to go down that path. I would like finally to congratulate and thank the organizers for this fantastic organization, which we are very proud as the EU to support, and bahut shukriya.
Thank you so much, Ms. Kaminara, EU Ambassador to Pakistan. May I now request Her Excellency Wendy Gilmore, High Commissioner of Canada to Pakistan and a great friend of Pakistan, please come and share her views with the audience regarding the event and plate Asma Jahangir.
Thank you very much. And thank you so much to the organizers of this conference for the invitation to be here today. To my esteemed members of the panel, the Chief Justice of Pakistan, the Justice of the Supreme Court of Pakistan, the Justice of the High Court of the Chief Justice of the Lahore High Court, and my others. It is truly a privilege to be here, to see so many people in this room today, to have so many people here in Pakistan committed to spending their time and their energy devoted to the subject of human rights, of respect, of diversity, inclusion, and pluralism. This is truly encouraging for all of us to have this opportunity today. Asma Jahangir was a luminary in this field, a friend of Canada, of Pakistan, of all of us, and really a guiding light in the preeminence that human rights should play in our society and in how governance happens. I'd say just a few words today, perhaps, as part of this panel. I'm very much looking forward to hearing from my other panelists that are with us this morning. But I think first and foremost, this is supposed to be initially an opportunity to talk about the role of the judiciary in human rights. And the judiciary plays an incredibly important role in the triumvirate of institutions that govern a nation: the executive, the legislative branch, and the judiciary, especially in a parliamentary democracy like is Pakistan, or a parliamentary democracy like we have in Canada. The role played by these institutions are critical, and each branch has a different and complementary role to play. The legislative branch, of course, makes laws. We've seen that in Pakistan's parliament this week. The executive branch oversees the implementation of these laws, and the judicial branch is to interpret the laws and to resolve disputes arising from them. Canada's former Chief Justice, Beverly McLaughlin, who was the first woman Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Canada, she was the Chief Justice for 17 years and held that position. I was hoping at some point we would have her here at the conference. Unfortunately, that didn't prove to be the case, but she's very much here with us in spirit. She's written that the role of the judiciary, one of its most essential roles, is ruling on legislation and on the executive branch and ensuring that those laws are constitutional and that they are consistent with the principles governing a country. That they have to maintain the task of guaranteeing that the Constitution and the laws adapted by legislatures are appropriate, are consistent, but that play due deference to the legislature's role in preeminent lawmaking and the ability in arriving solutions through debate and research, and ensuring that those laws represent the will of the peoples in the country. These are incredibly important roles, and it shows the preeminent task that's played in particular in that complementary role by legislatures and the judiciary. This is something that I think we can all spend some time thinking about, and ensuring that as laws are passed that embody the principle of the international obligations for human rights, of the respect for peoples, that they are then implemented effectively. This is one of the challenges that we see in Pakistan and elsewhere around the world, that laws are implemented unevenly and that don't always apply to the people that are those that need them the most. My colleague Andrula has just mentioned the very vulnerable populations of women and girls that exist here in Pakistan. This is one of the challenges that Pakistan is faced with, and one of Canada's chief priorities here is supporting the empowerment of women and girls, making sure that women and girls are able to achieve their full rights, their full opportunity within the society, which cannot happen unless they are afforded equal access under the law, access to education, to opportunities, to health, and to justice. We strive very hard to work with our partners here in Pakistan to make this happen. Canada has a feminist foreign policy, a feminist international assistance policy, which places the rights of women and girls at the heart of everything that we do. And so I'm so encouraged to see so many women here in the audience today, so many, not quite a balanced participation on the panel, but lots of women who will be speaking over the course of the next 2 days. This is important. Women have to be able to take their voice, take their place, to have a voice in these fora. Diversity, inclusion, and pluralism are at the heart of Canadian values, the heart of what we try and do, and the heart of what this conference is representing. So again, I'm so pleased to be able to be here today. I'm looking forward to listening to all of you, to the panelists, and really encourage you to take this opportunity and have your voice heard. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ji. And we move on further. I would now request Mr. Knut Osterby, Country Director, UNDP. Ladies and gentlemen, Knut has served Pakistan like a real friend. in 4 different stints, I believe. Knut is here for almost 9 years, serving Pakistan and people of Pakistan. So please give him a big welcome, Mr. Knut, as to be Country Director, United Nations Development Program.
Distinguished panelists, friends, participants, thank you so much for inviting me here. It's the second time I'm in this conference, but this is the third Asma Jahangir conference that UNDP has the honor of being part of. It gives us immense pleasure to witness how the Asma Jahangir Foundation has evolved this into a truly memorable event, not to be missed by anyone interested in human rights. All along, our cooperation with the Asma Jahangir Foundation, based on our shared vision for protection, promotion, and strengthening human rights and equality, has deepened and further nurtured our collective commitments to human rights. Today, we gather here not just for a series of expert sessions and dialogues on most compelling human rights themes, but also to rejuvenate the spirit that Asma Jahangir imbued in the human rights discourse in Pakistan and beyond its borders. At the United Nations, we remember Asma Jahangir as a human rights giant. For more than 40 years, she defended human rights with courage, eloquence, and integrity. She stood up for everyone, everywhere, for women victimized in the name of honor, for abused children and religious minorities, for bonded laborers and the disenfranchised, and even for her critics. We remember Asma Jahangir as one of the world's loudest voices for the rule of law, democracy, and human rights. Her sister, Hina Jilani, rightly said that her passing was a loss for everyone, but especially for those who are voiceless and whose voices she raised. In 1996, my wife Anne was fortunate to be able to interview Asma Jahangir for the Norwegian newspaper Aftenposten. They spoke of her work and the pressures she faced. Asma spoke with genuine pain when they discussed the plight of abused women or prisoners of the downtrodden. And asked, wasn't it hard to dedicate your whole life to fighting for the poorest and most helpless? Yes, but she was unfazed, although for her children's sake, she wished she didn't always get home so late. One day she said, they will hopefully understand why it was necessary. I know they understand. We all understand. That's why we are here. Defending human rights is difficult work, but defending human rights has never been more necessary. The theme of this year's Asma Jahangir Conference, Challenges to Human Dignity, reminds me of Asma Jahangir's words, I would simply not compromise on the fundamental rights of people. These words are a constant reminder that a society is stronger and more resilient when each individual has the agency to play a meaningful role in political, economic, and social life. This includes being able to access information, engaging in dialogue, expressing difference of opinion, and peacefully joining together to express their views. This also includes defending the rights to freedom of speech, thought, conscience, religion, and belief, as well as promoting accountability for human rights violations and abuses, and highlighting threats to human rights conditions within the society whenever and wherever they might occur. Like every UN entity, UNDP is resolute in playing its full part in advancement of human rights and to ensure that no one is left behind. Equally, we are convinced that promotion of human rights is not the narrow province of any organ or office. It is a shared responsibility that concerns and impacts us all, everywhere, and at all times. In Pakistan, we work closely with the Ministry of Human Rights as well as the provincial human rights and social welfare departments. We supported the government with the Transgender Persons Act, establishing the first Transgender Protection Center in the country, as well as developing the National Action Plan on Business and Human Rights. In making this work possible, I thank our key partners, the German Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the governments of US and Switzerland over the past years. We are also supporting the Ministry of Human Rights in establishing a comprehensive mechanism on human rights data collection analysis and reporting. At the provincial level, the departments are receiving technical capacity support for improved policy development and implementation. Apart from that, we work extensively through our rule of law program with the support of the European Union, the US and the government of Japan in establishing model police stations and the gender desks to facilitate the people and especially the women of Pakistan to access justice. I'm especially proud of the virtual courts being established through this program to ensure no one is left behind. Thanks to the support of USAID, we are helping young women lawyers with their education and training so that there could be more aspiring young Asma Jahangirs. Finally, it's befitting that this year's Asma Jahangir conference coincides with the lead up to the 16 days of activism and up towards the International Human Rights Day. The UDP stands ready to work and assist Pakistan on the implementation of its national and international human rights obligations and commitments in its devoted collaboration with the state, government bodies and civil society. Meanwhile, it's essential that the voice of civil society is incorporated into this work. We seek to ensure greater transparency, predictability and inclusivity for NGOs and civil society in our work. And we welcome your efforts to ensure strong civil society representation and leadership in Pakistan's development and human rights journey. With this, I congratulate the Asma Jahangir Foundation at the onset of the